So you're a first-time builder and you have no clue what processor you should put in your computer. Let's help you out with that today. So the first thing we are going to talk about is we are going to look at the market, because whenever you are buying a processor, you have two options. You can go for the best performance or you can go for the best cost. So if the market is getting ready to change, meaning that a new processor is getting ready to be released, which might be the new fastest, you might get the second fastest, basically the fastest of the old lineup, and save a whole bunch of money on it since the new one is coming out. Now that's a decision you have to make, and a lot of that depends on your budget. A lot of what we talk about in this video will be budget oriented, so if you do have the money to just get the fastest, get the newest, latest, greatest thing, like right now, AMD Zen's getting ready to come out, so go ahead and buy up their old architectures, and they will be a lot cheaper than buying Zen when it comes out. The next thing that we're going to talk about is price. Now that can change a whole lot depending on what the newest thing is, how old the processor is, but basically what you need to know is that AMD has always been kind of the budget-oriented company, and they don't boast as many features as Intel does, and they don't boast the same amount of performance on their higher-end processors. But if you're looking for a processor that's basically an i5 equivalent, go ahead and go with the AMD processors because it'll save you a lot of money. Or if you just want the feature set that is on the Intel processors, go ahead and go with the Intel processors, but you'll spend a little bit more money for the same performance that you'd get on an AMD processor. However, there is of course the argument of reliability, and that is really for you to decide and for you to research, because a lot of the stuff that we could talk about in this video would take me far too long to explain. So we're just going to cover some basic things to just kind of help you and guide you with your research on what processor is best for you. The next thing, number 3, is performance. Now, if you need a performance-oriented build, you definitely need to go with Intel. AMD Zen might change this, but I really doubt it. I don't have super high hopes for AMD Zen processors. So Intel is basically your option, and going with a i7 is definitely the play if you need lots of performance. If you don't need that much performance, then if you're just building a gaming rig, I would definitely recommend one of the higher end i5s or a higher end AMD processor. Number 4, you need to consider what features you want on this processor. If you need a whole lot of RAM, you definitely need to go with an Intel Enthusiast platform processor, like the one in the system behind me right here. I didn't go with that much RAM, I just have 32 gigs in that system. I mainly wanted it for the core count, I wanted it for the performance. But the Intel Enthusiast platform can go up to like 512 gigs of RAM, so if you need to reach crazy amounts of RAM like that, definitely go with that platform. I think the most you can fit in an AMD board is like 64 gigs or 128, something like that. So Intel definitely has AMD beat there, and the Intel i7s on the Enthusiast platform, well, Intel i7s and Xeons on the Enthusiast platform will definitely get you there. And also with that core count, that's a 6-core processor that's hyper-threaded, so that's 12 logical cores, and AMD really can't compete with that. So if you need a lot of performance, go ahead and go with the Enthusiast platform or the server platform, because you can get an Enthusiast motherboard like this and put an Intel Xeon server processor in it that can have up to like 22 cores hyper-threaded and crazy stuff like that. But if you're a gamer, you definitely do not want to have that many cores in your system because they will be slower cores. And what you want is you want a faster core speed. You don't want to have the game only being able to use like 4 of those slower cores. You want it to be able to use 4 faster cores like you would find in like an Intel i7 7700K. But if you're doing video editing and stuff like that, where you need a lot of cores to render out video and stuff, the Xeons or the high-end i7s on the Enthusiast platform are definitely for you. And you also have to keep in mind that the Enthusiast platform is a different socket than the Intel consumer platform, so you will only be able to put i7s and Xeons into the board if you go with the Intel Enthusiast platform. The next thing that we need to consider, number 5, is the temperature that the processor will be putting out. Nowadays it's not as major of a concern, but still I thought that it should be included in this video. If you're doing a small build, you might not want to put a big AMD processor in it, because AMD processors are notorious for running super hot and putting off a lot of heat that could heat up the components around it, and you definitely want to make sure that you have a lot of cooling for them. If you have a big Intel processor, you need a big case with a lot of fans and probably have it water cooled to dissipate all the heat while you're working. So you need to take that into account and make sure you get a cooler that is beefy enough for the processor that you can get. And you can easily do that by looking at the TDP of the processor, which is basically the heat wattage that it's going to be putting out, and the max TDP of the cooler, and matching up a cooler that has a lot higher of a TDP, max TDP, than the processor that you're going to be putting it on, to make sure that you can dissipate that heat and get it out of there. And also having case fans, because the cooler, if you're going with an air cooler, might not actually move the heat out of the case. You might have to do that with case fans, so you definitely need to take that into account. And it is always good to make sure that you have more intake fans than you have exhaust fans, just to make sure you have more cool air coming in, maintaining a positive case air pressure so that dust doesn't come in the cracks and stuff, and it also just keeps it cooler, having more cool air intake in and exhausting out the hot air with the fewer amount of fans. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that it helped you kind of figure out what you needed to look for in a processor and maybe guided your research. There is no single video that can help you decide what processor you need for your computer. You need to do a lot of research and do that for every component in the system, because it is truly a jungle out there when you're trying to decide what you need to build, especially your first time, because you don't really know what the market's like, you don't know what's good, what isn't. So definitely do your research. Hopefully this video has helped guide you, and you can look forward to more videos like this over other PC components in the future. So if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and leave a like on it. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.